Welcome to another ABC webinar on the Allison Transmission Generation 5. My name is Danny Landry, and I'm going to take you over some of the features of the new Allison Transmission Gen 5. Let's talk about the advantage of having an Allison transmission. The Allison transmissions are fully electronically controlled. It oversees the operation of the transmission, controlling the transmission upshifts and downshifts, and providing important information of the operation of your drive system. With the Allison transmission, it's actually a smart transmission. It adapts to the way you drive. Hence why if one driver drives a coach for 2 or 3 days, the transmission will adapt to the way he drives and his shift patterns. And when you get into another driver taking over, he may notice that it doesn't shift the way he thinks it should. But after he drives for a short period of time, the Allison will actually adapt to his driving conditions also. As the world leader in medium and heavy duty commercial transmissions, Allison continues its ongoing improvement initiative with the introduction of the fifth generation electronic controls for the shift selectors for model year 2013 Allison 3000s, 4000s series models, and the TC10 TS model. And basically what that's telling you is, compared to the Gen 4, your output readings on the transmission shift pad selector are going to be definitely different on how you view them. And instead of the Gen 5, what's going to be changing is also your TCM, the outlook on that, or how that looks, is actually changed also. The 5th Gen electronic control shift selector features easy-to-read graphics displays that show both text and symbols. Your mode button, Allison Automatics offer primary and secondary shift schedule modes to enhance performance or fuel economy. The vehicle always defaults to the primary mode. You can switch to secondary mode by just pushing the mode button. The prognostic feature of the Gen 5 transmission, the wrench icon will illuminate briefly after you turn the key on to the run position on your Allison equipped vehicle to indicate the prognostics are enabled. It's basically just doing a simple check to make sure everything is working correctly. But if your wrench icon stays on or flashes, this indicates there's a service issue related to a clutch, filter, or fluid life issue. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the new displays you're going to get on the transmission shift selector. For instance, your oil life monitor, as you can see here, it shows you the status of the oil life will be displayed. For instance, oil life at 100% or until the fluid is due for a change. So once you start driving, you'll actually see that percentage going down depending on how you drive and the conditions that you're driving in. You also have your filter monitor, which on this one says your filters are okay. It's the status of the filter life is displayed as oil filters okay and alerts when filters are due for a change. And when it's due for that change, your screen will actually pop up and tell you that you have replaced filters. Now let's talk about accessing the prognostics with your Gen 5 transmission. If you were alerted that with the wrench icon on the shift selector that service is due, you can check the status by toggling through the shift selector display as follows. Be sure to park the vehicle on a leveled surface, shift to neutral, and apply the parking brake before accessing prognostics through the shift selector. You should never access anything in the transmission shift selector while you're driving the coach. So, for instance, if I wanted to check the oil life monitor, I would push the up and down arrows 2 times on the shift selector, and it would display my oil life. If the oil life was new, I should see oil life at 100%. And to access my filter life monitor, simultaneously press the up and down arrow 3 times on the shift selector. Acceptable filter life status is shown as filters okay. Unacceptable will show you as replace filters. And to access the transmission health monitor, simultaneously press the up and down arrows 4 times. When the trans health is okay, clutch maintenance is not required. If you see transmit health low is displayed, clutch maintenance is definitely required. You have internal problems with the transmission clutch. Now let's talk about resetting some of your prognostic features. For instance, with your oil life monitor, you can press and hold the mode button for approximately 10 seconds while you're in the oil life monitor mode. So if the oil life monitor comes up, to reset it, press and hold the mode button for approximately 10 seconds and that will reset it. Now there is also a secondary method, and when you do this method, you don't want to stop any more than 3 seconds in between. But what you can do is hit neutral, drive, neutral, reverse, neutral, and that will also set it. Obviously, just holding down the mode button is a little less difficult and easier to do. Now let's talk about how to reset the filter life monitor. Press and hold the mode button again for approximately 10 seconds while you're in the filter life monitor mode. And the secondary method, again, don't stop the sequence for more than 3 seconds while you started, would be neutral, drive, reverse, neutral. And again, you want to make sure you're on level ground. The coach is stopped with the park brake applied. Now, for your health monitor, you will not be able to reset that unless you're using Allison Dock after correcting a clutch system issue. So that would be the only way for the health monitor to reset. But for your filter life monitor and your oil, you can reset by going actually into the push pad to reset that. So just a real quick note, the transmission fluid cools, lubricates, and transmits hydraulic power. So it's very important that the proper fluid level be maintained at all times. If the fluid level is too low, the converter and clutches do not receive an adequate supply of fluids. If the fluid level is too high, the fluid can aerate, causing the transmission to shift erratically or overheat. A lot of problems that I do see with transmissions for shifting issues, a lot of it has to do either the transmission fluid has been over full or it's actually been under full, which in both cases that's actually bad, either have it low or to have it too full. In the next few slides, I'm going to show you how to use your transmission push pad shift selector to actually check your transmission fluid levels and how to determine if you're too low or too high or if the fluid is actually correct. So to get started, you want to make sure the vehicle is parked on level ground, shift to neutral, and apply the park brake. Use a push button shift selector and simultaneously press the up and down arrows one time. Now we'll continue on to the next step. The fluid level reading will be delayed until the following conditions are met. Engine must be at idle, transmission must be in neutral, output speed must be 0, fluid temperature must be between 140 degrees and 220 degrees for operating temperature. Vehicles has been stationary for 2 minutes to allow the fluid to settle. Step 4. The shift selector displays the oil level data as follows. If you have a correct fluid level, it will show you as in the picture. Transmission oil level is okay. If you have low fluid level, it will display how many quarts you are actually low. For example, transmission oil 2 quarts low. If you had a high fluid level, it would display transmission oil high and then the number of quarts. For example, as you can see on the right, trans oil 3 quarts high, showing that the transmission fluid has too much fluid in it. In this slide, we're going to go over some of the things you may see on the transmission shift pad if there was a delay in showing the fluid. For instance, as your first picture shows, settling for 62 seconds. That tells us that we did not wait 2 minutes for the fluid to settle before we decide to check the transmission fluid level. You could have engine RPMs too low, engine RPMs too high. Could have must be in neutral. So if you try to check this while the coach is in drive or in reverse, you definitely will get that where it must be in neutral. Oil temp too low, there the coach hasn't warmed up, or oil temp is too high. Vehicle speed too high, or if you have a sensor error, which is something internal going on inside the transmission. To exit this oil level function, press any range button once to exit on the shift pad. The TCM, or your transmission control module, monitors the transmission electronic controls. And when a problem condition is detected, it restricts shifting, illuminates the check trans light on the instrument panel, registers the diagnostic code. Continued illumination of the check trans light during vehicle operation, other than startup, indicates the TCM has detected a diagnostic code. Now let's go over how to pull up some of your diagnostic codes using the shift selector on the Allison transmission. Bring the vehicle to a complete stop. Apply the park brake. For a push button shift selector, simultaneously press the up and down arrow one time. The transmission fluid level will be shown in the display first, followed by the prognostics and then the diagnostic codes. Up to 5 codes may be recorded in memory. Each code remains in display until the mode button is pushed. Then the next code is shown. Active codes are shown first, newest to the oldest, followed by inactive codes still in the memory. And if you look to the right, your active codes, for instance, your P0730 would show as active. And if there was an inactive code at the bottom, it would show, for instance, P071D would be the inactive code. And when it says it'll store 5 codes in the system, if you have more codes in the system, as you fix or repair the codes and erase it, those other codes will start showing up. And in the final slide, I'm going to show you how to exit the diagnostic code function. And as you see in the list below, there's 3 different methods that you can use to get out of the function. You do not have to do all 3. All you have to do is one or the other. Simultaneously press the up and down arrow or press any range button will take you out of the diagnostic code menu. Wait approximately 10 minutes and the system will automatically return to normal operating mode. Or turn off the vehicle engine ignition switch, and that will also take you out of the diagnostic code function. And this is going to conclude this webinar of the Gen 5 transmission. And in this session, we covered how to check your trans health, transmission oil filters, transmission oil level, transmission oil life using the transmission shift selector. And we also looked at how to check and pull out your diagnostic codes that could be stored in the system.